Hello and welcome to the Psyched to Practice podcast, your one-stop for practical and useful clinical information, masterful insights from experts in the field, and a guide to daily living. Ray and I are back today. We really enjoyed doing the Kendrick Lamar kind of breakdown surrounding his Super Bowl performance and wanted to just be able to continue to put out things. I don't know that this is going to be a constant thing, but today we have something that's interesting. And I don't know that we've done anything like this before either, Ray.
Right. Yeah, we really haven't. And it's, it's kind of interesting because I think this, I think both of us, and I think a lot of people we've had as guests, we talk about this idea of using pop culture and talking about using music and celebrities and how that kind of connects in therapy. And, so today, there was a song that was kind of given to me where I had somebody say, hey, you got to check out this song. And it became a real interesting part of a therapy session with someone that I had. And then I ended up kind of really liking this artist. So the artist that we're going to talk about today is a guy by the name of Ren. So Ren Gill is his real name, but he just goes by Ren. So he has a song that's a couple years old that's called Hi Ren, that I think may be one of the most powerful songs I've heard. And so I shared it with Paul and I said, we got to talk about this guy and talk a little bit about the song and kind of how it relates to mental health.
And so while we're not able to share it with you before you're listening in, if you'd like, please pause. There's going to be different links to the song in the show notes. If you're seeing this on social media, we're going to have the video tagged as well as the YouTube video. If you're not driving and you have the opportunity, let's say watching the music video it just kind of takes it to that next level in terms of getting the experience. But even just listening, I think it has a lot of meaning and a lot of power here. Yeah,
it's really funny because I heard the song first. Then I went back and saw the video and I was like, wow, it took me to a whole different level. And again, I think we said this with kind of the Kendrick Lamar thing. The artistry is kind of brilliant. So hopefully you all have listened to it by the time we're in this discussion. But just to give you a little about what Hi Ren is. So Ren has been pretty open about having some health issues as well as some mental health issues throughout his life. And this song was kind of this dialogue with himself. And it's this kind of back and forth. And, I will say just kind of a little warning. It's a little dark at times. There's some real powerful language that some people might think is offensive, but is really meaningful. And we're going to talk about why it's meaningful because what we say to ourselves doesn't sound polite all the time. And I think that's what he illustrates quite beautifully in this song is this idea of this dialogue and not only what he says, but the change of pace, the change of volume, the change of intensity, that negative thoughts counter with what or how we're trying to counter negative thoughts and what that kind of sounded out loud with music, I thought was interesting.
And, as we're talking in it, it is like that representation of his own, I would say like the self-doubt, the anxiety, the depression. I believe he even mentioned later on that he's had psychosis before as well. So there's so much of that. And then there's this piece that's looking for, just positivity in his life. It's the positive self-talk. It's the confidence. It's the self-love. And these two kind of, initially conversing and then kind of getting into this heated back and forth. And one of the things that really strikes me is that this idea of really he's personifying his mental health. And, it's actually something that at times in sessions I will encourage. And I think even you've shared before of encouraging individuals to, talk to their depression. I think it was in our Swear Words Really Matter episode. You talked about that. Right. I don't know if it was your experience or just a study, but, swearing at our depression and saying, damn it, not today. And so I think he does that really well in this song. And the way that it starts off at the beginning of the conversation, really, it's this negative self-talk coming back in and it's almost kind of sneaking back in. And so it's, hi, did you miss me? It's been a while. And it's kind of like this restarting and trying to pull him in. And then the first time we hear that more kind of calming, positive self-reflection, it is a very calming response. It's very subdued and he kind of goes about that in a very mellow way in terms of just talking about making time for himself, being distant, and, working towards himself. And then it ratchets up from there. And I think that's an interesting dynamic because as the song goes on, I find that our negative self-talk gets a reaction. And I see that so frequently in sessions. It's, we try to approach it with this, it's respect in a way, like a respectful, very like gentle way of approaching and talking to ourselves. And the negative self-talk is just kind of like, fuck that. No, who are you? Like, you're a poser, you're a sellout, you're this and you're that. And like in sessions so frequently, the language that we try to encourage, like, hey, no, I'm not okay with that. Like bringing out that assertiveness. And I think the song does a great job of like sharing that, getting a rise. And then again, towards the end, we hear the tone of assertiveness that comes out.
Yeah. So I know there's other people that have kind of talked about this song. And I think a lot of times it's funny because I think some of the therapists who have talked about it go way too into this is a psychotic break. I mean, I'm not saying that can't be possible, but I almost heard this as just what people experience every day. And, kind of to your point, I think one of the things that caught me, this negative talk, that's what starts the song. And it's rapid. It's aggressive. You thought you buried me. That's risky. Like it's this like challenging, like, why would you try not to listen to me? And it's coming at him in this kind of intense way. When he responds back, he does so in almost a politeness. Like, and he's trying to justify it. I've just been taking some time. I've been trying to be distant. But, I often talk to kids. I'll say like, or even adults, we have to match the intensity of the negative thought. And as the song goes on, you get this kind of feel like the songs. And as he ramps it up, as he starts talking back a little forceful, the thoughts come even more intensely. So it's like, his negative thoughts are like, just take another pill, boy, like really almost belittling him for his struggles. And I think why this song connects is that in reality, it's what we deal with, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's psychosis. There is a pattern of this loudness, and we work hard to fight those thoughts. But a bully does get louder. A bully gets more mean. And even the language he uses. So like, the Ren that's fighting back doesn't swear very much in the song. But the Ren that's the negative voice, it's like, you're a fucking dumb boy.
Yeah.
This intensity. And, when I talk with people and I say, I don't want you to filter what your thoughts are. I want you to say them out loud, how they sound in your head. It's not nice. I mean, it's not like, hey, you made a mistake. It's you're an idiot. You fucked up again, whatever it might be. And he captures that dialogue with just, I mean, honestly, like it's quite masterful. So, I mean, you can tell in this song, this guy's done work. I mean, he's critical of it, which we can talk about in a minute, but he's not always positive about what his experience was. And I think that's awesome. I think that's a reality. But yeah, I don't know that I've seen a display of dialogue like this that matches so much with what I've heard in my career.
And I think in some ways it's that poking fun of and also showing a respect for the field of mental health and treatment there where, I have the lyrics pulled up here and it's, follow this 10-step program and rejoice. All your problems will be gone, you fucking dumb boy. Like,
right.
It's, and that's kind of this, like when I bring up diaphragmatic breathing with individuals, like a 50-50 that I get kind of an eye roll. It's like, okay, yeah, breathing exercises. Yeah, that's wonderful. And it's like this dismissiveness of certain pieces or even the way that it's presented. It's kind of being presented as this like, oh, hey, just do this and it's going to work. And he's like, are you kidding? Of course it's not going to work. And the process is such an important part, but also the engagement with it and like, being able to be a part of the process. And I hear, that's kind of this negative self-talk that he's going into. He's like, you don't believe in this. You know that this is going to fail. Don't lie to yourself. Don't kid to yourself. And being able to really pause. And I think it challenges that resolve. And I think, I think we'll talk about it in a bit, but towards the end, man, you hear the belief, you hear it. And it goes from kind of using the language to really believing in the language and inspiring hope for himself and in such a positive way.
Yeah, I agree. And there's, there's those flavors of saying, hey, some of this stuff didn't work for me. They just kept giving me medication. They kept giving me the 10 steps or to say the right, and all of these different things that he kind of goes through. And then I think that we're, again, kind of this shift that happens. You hear this, not only a little bit of hope, but you hear things that sound, as a psychologist, I sat back going, oh, that's mindfulness, right? Like I'm going to be distant. I'm going to take some time for myself. There's this peacefulness that kind of comes in, which again, I think it's what I appreciated about it is, listen, everything doesn't work for everyone. And this is work. It's hard work. And I think that his dialogue kind of illustrates that. Like, yeah, maybe there were a lot of good fits for some interventions that he did. And he calls that out. And yeah, I saw somebody else that was talking about the song and they were critical of that. And they said, oh, he's putting down mental health. No, I think, listen, we have to have some honesty with the idea that not everything works for everybody. And I think that rawness of saying, yeah, those things failed me, and that's okay. But the hope is the fact that, yes, that didn't work, but I finally found some things that did. And that's where, again, you kind of hear that shift. And it's also, I think, in this song where his voice becomes louder. His voice becomes confident. His voice starts standing up, and I think the line is he goes into this idea that, my name changes to hope, or people now know me as hope, like this, where there's this mindset shift. But again, it sounds a little dark. He talks about that I'm the one who loosens the noose of the rope, or on the rope, like this idea that hope is what's creating this change. And so it's kind of, I think there's a lot of ways you can interpret it, but as I kind of went through, I was like, oh, wow, we go from difficulty to kind of finding the right things for him.
And I'm so happy you brought up that line, because if you did, I was going to jump in, because that's such a powerful, such a powerful one. And even the verses that follow, and it's, and how I'll know that I'll prosper, because I stand here beside you today. Yeah, I've stood in the flame that cremated my brain, and I didn't once flinch or shake.
Yeah. Wow.
And,
right.
Yeah. It goes on into even just some more powerful pieces there. And to the other side of that hope, the other side piece of it's when it's the negative self-talk, it really blows itself up, and it talks about how it is, from the dawn of creation, I am temptation. I'm the reason for treason, the beheading of all kings. I am the sin with no rhyme or reason. And it just goes on, and it's
wow. Yeah.
It talks about bringing in chaos, and it really does seek to just kind of destroy or tear us down. And I think a lot of times, that negative self-talk, we think of it as a protector. We think of it as like, oh, if I don't get too big, then I can't be torn down too strongly. And he touches on that as well, especially if we're too rigid in this, like, no, I have nothing but belief in myself. Yeah. How, I think, well, I'll kind of go into the very end of the song. He goes into this more just a conversation with the audience. Yeah. And he talks about this pendulum swinging idea of, as we progress, we also regress. And it's such a powerful piece, because he's not denying that. He's recognizing how both are important. Like the self-doubt creates awareness, but we need to have that faith and belief in ourselves that we're able to accomplish, that we're able to be resilient and persevere and, hope.
Yeah. And I want to jump back to just kind of another line that, it really, so it was interesting. This song for me was a little bit of an emotional journey. Like, I've actually found myself kind of choking up at points when I first heard it. And like I said, that's when it really strikes you. But there's a line in the song, and it's dark, but he uses the line, you have to kill you if you want to kill me. Mm-hmm. Like this idea that, and I honestly, it was like kind of the point, like I almost like paused the song, kind of went like, whoa, like but like such a powerful statement, that this idea that, the only way I can get rid of this negativity is I have to eliminate who I am. And, again, when we talk about suicide, and, that is a thought that people have. It's the only way I'm going to get rid of this pain. I have to kill the pain. And so, I thought that was really it was a take back moment for me. And then when you later on then hear this kind of, again, going back to that hope, what have we heard from suicide research for years? What's the flip? We have to create hope. We have to have that piece. And, that we see that dialogue kind of play out here in the song. So I just wanted to call that piece out because as people are listening to it, listen to the intentionality that happens at that moment in the song. It really is done with, again, there's an artistic genius that kind of comes out here, but it creates this powerful pause at the end of that sentence before he then goes into that next piece.
And just in that, just such a powerful, powerful, I think resonates with the entirety of the song. And I would say powerful and haunting, and not just haunting in a negative way. It's unsettling, but haunting also kind of in that inspiring way. And God, he just does such a great job for both. And really in that end point, where it is just that conversation. And it's, he talks about the swaying of back and forth between the dark and the light, and the more intense the light shown, the darker the shadow is cast. Yeah. And I love
one of my favorite lines. Yeah.
It's so brilliantly done. And and he talks about it as this, again, two sides of the same coin, and recognizing it's not that we are meant to, lock it away in its entirety. It's how do we hear it, but also not let it be the only voice? And how do we be resilient and stand beside it in a way that we can get insight? We can get that almost even a push, because he goes from gentle to confident throughout the song. So it's a push that it gives him, but also we can't let it go untamed or else it'll consume. Yeah. And so I think that's what he's talking about in this needing to be gentle. We can't just the more rigid I became, the harder it got, the more I cursed my clumsy footsteps, the more I struggled. And as I got older, I learned to relax and learned to soften, and that dance got easier.
Yeah. There's honestly, I sat there, I was like, if I was teaching an intro to psychology class, this is how I would teach the theory of psychology, because so we have this this idea of the darker shadow, that whole piece, very Jungian, right? This idea of the shadow, this archetype, and this idea that we all live with that. We all have a darker piece. There's always those moments. And that line of when the light is shown, the darker the shadow is cast. Again, for me, I kind of went okay, here's the idea of when we make progress, that it's scary. As we get happier, we have a harder fall with our depression. We have this kind of, it becomes almost more prominent than when we're depressed. And we talk about that in therapy. I talk with people all the time. I'm like, listen, as you get well, as things feel better for you, that darkness can sometimes feel really overwhelming when it hits. And again, we prepare people for that's part of this building wellness in ourselves. The other from a theoretical standpoint is I love the cursed by my clumsy footsteps kind of thing. See, I actually felt there was a very acceptance, an ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy kind of piece that happens. I don't know that that's what he's gone through, or if he's heard some of the language, because, it was this idea, the more rigid I became, the harder it got. Great line, right? So it's, this idea we have to accept, if we do have mental health problems, the first step is that we can't just push against it. Sometimes that makes it worse. And a lot of times it makes it worse. But when we just take a moment and step back and accept this is who we are, and we can work through it, we can move forward with it. Again, it kind of gave me those, I don't know if you got the same thing, but I'm like, man, this is an ACT kind of, comment in the middle there.
And maybe even another kind of theoretical piece that comes to mind was jumping back to the beginning of the song, where I would like to directly quote it just because it's so well done. It's been a while. Did you miss me? You thought you could bury me, didn't you? And then it jumps ahead to deep down, deep down, that I'm in the periphery. And my thought goes to the avoidance and how it's this okay, let me just shut it out. Let me just kind of, keep it pushed away. And what a relief when I'm able to avoid something, and it gives that short-term gratification, but it's not then that long-term skill building that's needed to be able to tolerate it. And it's tolerating and creating, again, that acceptance piece at the very end that's so powerful and so important.
Yeah. I think honestly, throughout the song, I think there's very similar things. Yeah, it was, again, like, I don't know, my brain kind of goes into all these tangents, but like that part you were just talking about, it made me think of the old movie A Beautiful Mind. And, in the end of the movie, like, John Nash is, who had schizophrenia at that time. He talks about, like, I have to live with my hallucinations. They're never gone. And, in the movie, I thought it illustrated it really well. And I read John Nash's actual book that he wrote that I would encourage those that are interested in that. It's actually quite interesting. But it's this idea that, they're with me. These things are part of who I am. And part of his healing with something as severe as schizophrenia was to acknowledge that was part of his life. He wasn't now trying to get rid of them. And they walk beside him. They walk beside him through the end of that movie. And so that kind of cued me to that, which, again, there's so many references you could kind of pull here. But, as we kind of wrap up, I want to end with his ending, because I think it's very, again, kind of a beautiful statement. For me, it was just powerful. And again, listen to the song, but take 5 minutes and watch this video, because the illustrations and the lights and just how he does the ending is really good. But the song ends with just this dialogue. There's no music at this point. And he ends with the statement, "It is this eternal dance that separates human beings from angels, from demons, from gods. And we must not forget that we are human beings." This, wow, great piece, again, theoretically, getting back to just kind of humanistic psychology at its core, that we have to, going back to our episode with Chris Germer, we have to give ourselves compassion. We have to give ourselves some grace. And despite all of these things, at the end of the day, we have to remember we're human beings. When I had the chance to work with Albert Ellis, he would always say, we're all fallible human beings. It's at the end of the day, we all have kind of these issues. And we just, in some ways, it's just this idea we have to recognize it and give ourselves that kind of, again, that compassion. And what a great way to end such an intense song, by just hitting that core piece, because I think we all need to be better at that. So I thought it was a good ending. What was your reaction? Same thoughts?
It absolutely was. And I was thinking of, Chris Germer as well, with especially the need to be both gentle and fierce with our self-compassion. And right. You hear both in this, and it's we see both in that positive self-talk when it comes to that compassion, because the criticism comes easily. It comes when we don't want that to come. And so we need to be very, again, that intentional, bringing it in and making that space to find that, that eternal dance, and finding the balance and the harmony, to maybe pull in some Michael Halsey as well with the, with that dance.
That's right. Well, I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this. For those of you who are interested in just intense music and things that have meaning, we're talking about one song. I've become kind of a huge fan of this guy. I think he's doing brilliant work, and some of the songs this is one example, but some of his others, touch on domestic violence and other mental health kind of things. But those of you that like tying this stuff into therapy, this gives you a lot. I mean, the person who was gracious enough to share the song with me, that's made me a fan of listening to Ren's music and using it now with a lot of other people. We had 3 sessions of digesting this and what it meant to this young man who, for the first time, heard a song that was his thoughts. So kudos to Ren and the good work he's doing to break some stigma down. So I'm glad we got to chat.
Absolutely. And, I've been liking these, again, I don't know if we want to call them supplemental content or bonus episodes, but, just being able to pick something and breaking it apart or talking about the impact it has. And with that, be sure to check out our new episodes that are dropping. But until then, be well and stay psyched.